Avery.com, Avary, for the most up-to-date news and information on Team Avery.
Avery, 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 Avery,
This is The Gala Show. I'm your reporter on the beat, Gala Avery. When I started The Gala Show, I aimed to make a mosaic of Los Angeles at this time in history. This is the city I love, and I wanted to preserve a time capsule of what exactly made this place so great. My goal was to talk to people whose accomplishments interested me, whose stories caught my eye, and whose personalities lit up the room. Today, I am doing just that. I've been following her story over Instagram and just knew I had to have her on the show to bring more awareness to the journey she is on. Today on the mic, I am joined by Casey Longstreet. Hey, Casey.
Hi.
So before we bring up the topic for today, I have a question for you. A very serious question.
Okay.
What is your favorite movie?
The Shining.
Oh, that was okay. I appreciate you so much because you just were like, I got it.
No
ready.
hesitation.
No
That's
hesitation
always
whatsoever.
my go-to movie. Like, it's the movie that made me fall in love with film, and it's just, that's my number one.
So what about it made it so good?
I think the experience of watching it for the first time, I was 14 years old and my dad showed it to me, and then we went to the Stanley Kubrick exhibit the next day, so it was like just an immersive experience watching the movie and then going to the exhibit and seeing all this really cool stuff. And then just from there, I got really hooked. Like
I think you even have the book right there, the big
do.
Taschen book. Yeah.
Yes, my dad got that for me for the holidays, and I'm really excited to dive into that. But it kind of was the movie that made me appreciate like filmmaking and, kind of like analyzing film. And like, I've watched it so many times. I know like all the little Easter eggs and little behind the scenes things. And I just like, it's weirdly a comfort movie for me. I know like that's so weird to say for a horror movie.
It's interesting because a lot of people have horror movies as comfort
Yeah.
movies. And like, I love Stanley Kubrick. Like my dad loves him. My dad's favorite is Clockwork Orange.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, it's probably Dr. Strangelove
Yeah.
or maybe The Killing, depending on the
Okay.
day. But The Shining is one that like I have a lot of diehard friends for it.
Yeah.
Have you read the book?
I have tried when I was younger, but I'm getting more on a reading kick right now. So
Yeah.
I think that's going to be on my list eventually.
I think
to
they're
try
also
and
two
do
very
it.
different things.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you had a choice right away. Though.
Yes.
You were like, I know exactly what my choice is.
I'm obsessed with it. I love it.
I love that. Now, as always, my guest gets to bring their topic to the mic. So, Casey, why don't you tell us what your topic is and why you decided to choose it?
My topic is discussing and talking about my diagnosis with breast cancer, which happened in September of 2024. And the reason why I decided to choose this is because I think it's really important to talk about it and raise awareness and share my journey, as it was really helpful for me to hear other people on their journey as well.
But before we get into the topic, it's time for a commercial break. Back by popular demand, the Video Archives merch store is up and running. Get your favorite t-shirts, hats, notebooks, stickers, and more at videoarchivesmerch.com. You know me. I write all my notes in the Notes on Cinema notebook, the Gala edition, of course. Check out videoarchivesmerch.com to get yours today. Hey, thanks so much for being a loyal listener. If you want to keep up with me off mic, make sure to follow me on Instagram at Gala Avery. And we're back. And that is the topic for today, cancer awareness. I have 30 minutes on the clock and our time starts now. So Casey, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself and just like who you are? And I know a little bit about you because I know your dad. So
Yeah.
that's the funny part. That's how I know you. I started watching you through your dad, and I was just so blown away by the person that you are. And I was so captivated just by you and how you present yourself that I was like, wow. And then when I just saw kind of your journey, I was like, I just have to talk to her.
That's so nice of you. Thank you so much for saying those kind words. My name is Casey Longstreet. I am 26 years old. I'm born and raised Los Angeles. And that's kind of like, I feel like the general.
It's like you're like about me. Like,
yeah, like
here I
my
am.
little about me. I guess I can start from the beginning of it all and kind of why I know all this information about myself, like with my medical journey and everything. So when I was 13 years old, I had a younger brother who was diagnosed with a glioblastoma brain tumor, which is a form of really aggressive brain cancer. He did pass away when he was 11 years old, and I was 14 at the time when this happened. It was obviously very sad. I had to grapple with grief at a very young
I
age.
can only imagine. I have a little brother that is
Yeah.
around the same age gap as
Yeah.
you and your brother, and he and I went through something very traumatic around that same age range. Thankfully, I still have my brother. He's still
Yeah.
with me, but I can only imagine just like the intense grief that you must have had to go through at a very formative time in your
Yeah.
life. Puberty. You were going through puberty also at
Yeah,
that same time. It's intense.
It's really insane kind of to think about experiencing grief at such a young age and kind of like, like your brain is still like maturing, like you said, like you're going through puberty.
And also like you're in like what, like 6th, 7th, 8th grade.
Yeah.
Middle school is the
It's in
hardest
8th
time.
grade,
Yeah,
yeah.
middle school is the hardest time of your life. And not only that, but like your childhood is essentially over when you go through a traumatic event at that age.
Absolutely. It definitely forced me to grow up very fast. And, while I obviously wish my brother was still here, I think I wouldn't be the person I am today if it hadn't happened. And, I have a lot of perspective. And, I think sometimes you have to look at the positives when you are dealing with something that's inevitable and you can't control. So
I think that's such an amazing thing because when you go through something, it's not what happens to you, but it's how it defines you and
Yes.
how you act towards it and the fact that you're able to say like, let's look at the positives in a situation. It's something that you carry forth with you.
Absolutely. And I'm really grateful that my parents really fostered a healthy environment to talk about it and be open and, share our story. And I think honestly, like keeping his memory alive in that way is really beneficial. But, also, understanding that, you're taking that and letting it empower yourself moving forward instead of, letting it be a setback for you.
Yeah, that's really, really difficult. Yeah. So because of that happening, was that how you knew about the cancer in general?
Yeah. So back then, right, when my brother was going through treatment and we knew kind of there wasn't a lot more we could do given the aggressiveness of his diagnosis, there was a doctor who recommended for my family to get tested for a gene called the mutated P53 gene, which is also known as Li-Fraumeni syndrome. And so we all tested, my entire family, and my mom is not a carrier, but my dad, my brother, and I all are. And so just, back then when this was happening, there wasn't, I think, a lot of conversation about genetic mutations.
I've never even really heard about this
Yeah.
gene. That was one of the big things because I know you're 26
Yes.
and I just turned 29.
Yeah.
And so for a young woman to be grappling with cancer and then to have heard like you have a gene that mutated and you kind of knew it could be coming, it's very like brave in the face of adversity.
Yeah, I mean, I was 14 when I found that out. So, in the same moment of me dealing with grief, I also had to accept the fact that, my chances were extremely high to develop cancer, and especially after seeing my brother go through it. I think with breast cancer, as, being higher in women, my percentage was over 90%.
Wow.
And I only had one cancer in my family that we knew of. My paternal grandmother passed away at a young age of breast cancer, which, back then also paternal breast cancer wasn't really considered like.
It wasn't.
No.
And also like a lot of medical records and medical history because of like, for example, my grandmother grew up during World War II and I had a medical issue I had a very intense gallbladder thing.
Okay.
And for 7 years I had gallstones undiagnosed and I kept asking for like family history and she's like, oh, I don't really know. I don't have any family history. Oh yeah. Like my aunt, her stomach exploded. I'm like, what does that mean? That doesn't help me.
Yeah.
Like, and that's something maybe you should have told me
Yeah.
previously because maybe that's important. But there's like a lot of lack of family history.
Absolutely.
And so being able to track genetically is really helpful.
Yeah, and we don't know 100% if my grandma was a carrier of this gene, just like you said, like we don't have record of that. But, we can kind of, assume potentially that she did carry it since my dad was a carrier and passed it down to me and my brother. But, like you said, family history and understanding it and your genetics is so important. And I obviously learned that at a very young age. And, I think my family and I believe that if we had known that information, maybe we would have done things preventatively to make sure, to keep my brother healthy. And, it could have potentially saved his life, honestly.
Are there preventative things that you can do if you know that you have this gene?
Absolutely. So when I found this information out, we started just doing baseline testing on me, and I've been keeping those up ever since. So, I get MRIs done. I used to get ultrasounds done before I turned 18, blood tests, consistent doctor's appointments and everything like that. When you have the gene, you're not really supposed to be exposed to radiation or also take anything with hormones in it. So just because that could potentially exacerbate, the irregular cells. And also I'm not medical at all. So like if I'm not explaining
this is just your personal information that
Yeah.
you've been told by doctors on
Yes.
how to benefit yourself.
Absolutely. So, since I've been 14, I've been kind of under this monitoring program. For me, I am a really big advocate to make sure it was pretty non-invasive. Like I said, up until I was 18, I was doing, I think, twice a year different tests. But, once I turned 18, I do MRIs once a year, and that includes full body, brain, breast. And then I also get a breast ultrasound done because mammograms have radiation. So it would be recommended that I do not get a
Because
mammogram
you're
done.
supposed to stay away from radiation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I get blood tests done, and obviously I have my doctor's appointments I go to every year. But like I said, I want to live my life, and I don't want to be scared of
Oh, yeah, you
what
don't
could
wanna let it define
potentially-
you.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want it to define me. And so I think knowing that I was on top of my health was actually like giving me like confidence in a way.
You
like,
were
okay,
empowered
like
by
we're
it.
monitoring
Yeah.
it. Like I know if anything were to happen to me, we're going to know right away.
Do they recommend that people get tested for this gene, like if they have cancer in their family? Like, is it just something like you can go get tested for to see?
I
or-
believe so. And like I said, I'm not like a doctor or anything,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure like the exact like protocol for it, but it is similar, I believe, to the BRCA gene, which I think is people know the BRCA gene more just because it's been more out in the public. People have talked about it more. And BRCA really only covers breast and ovarian, and I think some other cancers as well. But this gene, the P53, the mutated P53 gene, I can kind of give you like a little
Yeah.
science definition of it. So basically, everyone has a P53 gene in their body. It's a tumor suppressor gene. So when you have a mutated version of it, basically your body does not have the ability to really fight off cancer as effectively as someone without the gene. Even if you don't have the gene, you still can get cancer, but you just have a higher risk if you have the mutated gene. So the list of cancer for the mutated P53 gene is a little more extensive than BRCA. I don't have the full list on the top of my head, but I know it's breast, blood, brain. It's a lot of like the B cancers. That's like always like what my family has said
Yeah.
is it's the B cancers.
like bone.
Yeah, it might be.
It just seems like a more comprehensive than
yes.
the other testing.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
for sure.
mean, I've had to do tests that, I've already gotten a colonoscopy done. Like I know
That's
like,
intense. No, to be honest, that is one thing that I know eventually they recommend people at a certain age get
Yes.
it. That is one thing. If I can get through my life without doing a colonoscopy, I will get through my life without doing a colonoscopy.
It's not that bad. You get to take a good nap. And then, I mean, the
yeah.
prep is terrible, but I mean, usually the protocol's 50 and I got my first one done at 24 years old. Like that's
Because you knew that you had the gene, and so you knew that you had to keep on top of it
Yeah.
and like check and make sure that like, hey, I'm staying healthy and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. So, like I said, I started doing that at 14 years old. So, over 10 years ago, this has been my life, but in a non-invasive way where, I'm not letting it define me.
I mean,
or
I think that's
anything.
also really important, the whole non-invasive thing, because a lot of people, when they are faced with medical issues, sometimes tend to completely back away from doctors and they get really scared because it's like, I have gone through so much, so I don't want to go through more, and I'm afraid of being poked, prodded, tested, etc.
Yeah.
And that can also be really dangerous because then you're not keeping up on your health.
Absolutely. And look, I'll be honest, like there are things that scare me. Like I think going to these doctor's appointments and, it does sometimes trigger things with the grief that I've experienced with my brother and seeing him, experience his cancer and everything like that. So, I think there's obviously, it's important to acknowledge both sides of it. And, a lot of people I do talk to, some people just think like ignorance is bliss. They don't want to know. I find, and I think my family and I find that it's powerful to have this knowledge, or knowledge is power in this situation because I mean, in my situation, which I know we'll get to in a second, but we caught my cancer diagnosis at a really early stage, and that's what's honestly like the best thing about it was that it was treatable. And if I wasn't on top of my test, I could have gotten, I could have been diagnosed with a really aggressive cancer in like 10 years just because.
Because you weren't keeping up on it.
Yeah.
You didn't see it. And now they're able to identify things so early.
Yes.
That it's so helpful because you're like, hey, I know now that I can take care of this. I can nip it in the bud.
Absolutely.
So you were 14 when you found out about the gene.
Yes.
And then fast forward 12 years later, you've lived a bunch of stuff. Like you've done a bunch of stuff. You've gone to college.
Yes.
We were just talking before. You met your boyfriend.
Yes.
You have like a wonderful life.
Yes.
And
I work in entertainment. Like I live a great life, and I'm, very happy and grateful for the life that I live. But obviously this is always something that's in the back of my head. I know I have to do these tests every year. What's funny, what you're saying about college, right before I went to college, actually, I had a little bit of a scare, and it ended up being nothing, but it kind of connects to what happened to me recently. I got a breast MRI, and they found a little thing. And because I had such a high risk, they have to take those things seriously. So
Yeah.
I think with someone without the gene, they wouldn't take that seriously. They would
You'd
just
be
be
like, let's
like,
watch it.
yeah, let's just watch it. But for me, they're like, you know what? Let's just biopsy it. And it was the summer before college. Like I just graduated high school. I was like ready to start a new chapter of my life. And I was like, okay, great. Like,
Did you feel just really kind of scared in that
yes,
moment?
it was really hard for me because I felt like I'm starting a new chapter. Like I'm going to be an adult. Like this is so exciting. Luckily, like I said, it was nothing. It was literally just like extra skin or not skin, sorry, extra tissue.
Yeah, extra tissue, yeah.
And I'm glad that like we kind of got that out of the way, and I knew it was okay, but obviously going through the motions of getting a biopsy was kind of scary, and that was my first time ever having some sort of scare. But I was glad that like I went into college and like that next chapter in my life feeling settled, like, okay, I feel good.
And did it also kind of like reinforce like this is what I want to be doing with my life? Like I want to be going to college.
Yes.
And I want to be studying what I'm studying, and I want to go have these experiences.
Yes.
Because when you have a scare, a health scare like that, or even like a life scare or a traumatic experience happen, it can either kind of shift your mentality completely, or it can be like, I'm on the right path.
Yes, absolutely. So that happened to me when I was 18. And so between 18 and now, but 18 and now when I was 25, when I found all this out. So flash forward, I guess, to last year, which was 2024. I've been fine, obviously, healthy. I've been getting my normal tests done every year. Even down at college, I was keeping it up. So I knew up until this point I was doing pretty well. Usually when I get my breast monitoring done, I do a breast ultrasound 1 month, and then 6 months later, I'll do a breast MRI. So I'm theoretically getting, double monitoring every year, because when I was told when I turned 18 that breast cancer would be kind of like the most prevalent once I became an adult. And even like when I was 16, I had doctors say to me, you should consider getting a preventative double mastectomy.
Wow. That must have been really, really scary as a 16-year-old girl, because it's like you're already really self-conscious about your body. Like all girls are when you're going through that. And then on top of it, to be told like, hey, you should get this preventative procedure where it will just change what you look like completely.
And they were like, you should do it in your mid 20s. Like, so it wasn't like at 16 years old.
Like, okay, at 16,
I don't know
do
if
it.
that would be, I don't even know if they do that.
Maybe if you have like a really aggressive form of cancer when you're 16, maybe they'll do it.
Yeah.
But I think also are you still growing breast tissue at 16?
Probably.
So maybe it's not a good idea to do it that young.
Yeah, I don't know. But no,
so they were like in your 20s.
Yes,
you should
like
consider
mid
doing
20s,
this.
you should do it. And I was very stubborn about it. I was like, nope, I don't want to do it. I knew I would have to do it eventually, but I wanted to like have kids first. I wanted to like go through the whole motion of
completely.
Yeah, like I didn't want to do it if I didn't have to. I felt like it was kind of, I was very scared about it. Like that felt very traumatic for me. I didn't want to do it preventatively.
I mean, I can understand. Like the thought of it for me is also really scary. Like if I was even told like, oh, you have cancer and you need to get a double mastectomy, I would be terrified.
Yes. So I honestly was like, I'm not getting this done. I will just be on top of my tests, which I was. And, everything was fine. And I used to say, unless I absolutely need to do it earlier, I might not do it till I'm in my 30s. Like I didn't want to.
Yeah.
So flash forward back now again. We're flashing back and forward a lot, I feel like. But
that's life.
Right. So this past year in 2024, life kind of got, in the way. I actually did not book a breast ultrasound for me until July and then my breast MRI was scheduled in August. So I was getting both tests like a month apart.
Yeah, you kind of like, you pushed one a little bit.
Yeah, and I usually do like, let's say it'd be like January, December, January is like the breast ultrasound, and then August I always do my breast MRI.
Yeah, and you're getting tested so much that it probably feels like you're keeping up with it.
Yeah. But, life got busy. I forgot to schedule it, as one does. I'm not perfect. And I got my ultrasound done in July. And it came back totally clear. And I was like, great. I have my MRI next. I should all be good. I had my MRI scheduled, like I said, like not even like a month later. And in that session, I do full body, brain, and breast. And I got it done like I always do. Next day, I went on my portal where you check your results, and everything was fine except one thing, which was it said that I had an abnormality in my left breast, a tiny abnormality. I called my doctors. It was a Sunday. I remember this because, usually doctors will call you if there's something wrong.
And
but
usually when you check your portal and you see something, it's like boom, 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 boom. It's like, what is going on? And your doctor hasn't called you yet.
Yes.
You don't know if it's something you need to worry about or not.
Yeah, like I didn't know if I was like, well, maybe this is like nothing. And so I got in touch with my doctors that day, but it was a Sunday, and they were like, let's talk about what next steps are. And they were like, let's do a biopsy. And I actually went back like a few days later and I did an additional ultrasound, and where the abnormality was positioned, it was not reachable with the ultrasound.
Wow. So you really had to do the second testing,
Yes.
the MRI, to be able to
Yeah.
see it.
MRIs are more sensitive and they can pick up a lot. And so, ultrasounds, and I honestly, I don't even know if it would have been picked up on a mammogram. I didn't test with a mammogram. So, it was very, where it was located, it was very posterior on my left breast. So you really had to like
Get in there, yeah.
there, but an ultrasound just wasn't picking it up. Like I literally went back 2 days later and I was watching them like with a handheld ultrasound, like pushing and pushing and
looking for it.
Yeah, and they could not find it.
Wow. So thank God for the second testing.
Yes.
Like the additional double testing really was important.
Absolutely. And so, they were like, let's just, move forward with the biopsy. And they said, they're like, look, if we can't find it and, or we're not able to like get the biopsy directly on the abnormality, we'll monitor moving forward. So like about like a week and a half later, I had it scheduled. I did the biopsy, same exact thing I did when I was 18. So obviously I was like, oh my God, but I had done it before. So, I felt okay about it. Like, okay, I've done this before, take a little bit of a Xanax and you feel good, you're not sedated for it. So you have to kind of like feel it all.
You have to get zen and like.
Yeah, you have to just like breathe through it. But it hurts and it, it's not the most comfortable, but I wanted to know what this was. The next day I was home, I was working from home, and I got a call from my oncologist. And I've learned that in my life that if a doctor calls you, it's not good news.
Yeah. Normally, if a doctor is calling you, it's because they have something they need to talk to you about.
Yes.
And if they don't need to talk to you, they're not going to call you.
Absolutely. And also just like for like clarity's sake, I've always had an oncologist because of my high risk. And, obviously I've been healthy, but I have a really great team of doctors and, oncologists who have taken me on preventatively. But like I've been healthy obviously before all this happened.
Yeah, before 2024.
Yeah, but I have an oncologist just to like order my scans and, be on top of it with me as well. So answered the phone and he said to me that the biopsy came back as stage 1 breast cancer, like early stage 1. And he explained to me that the size of the abnormality, which is now we know as a tumor, was the size of a grain of rice. It was tiny.
Wow.
And that, like, I remember I was sitting in my bed and I felt like my world turned upside down. Like
your stomach flipped inside out, like everything came crashing down.
It was,
and you're in the middle of a work day.
yeah. And I was still like recovering from the biopsy since you have to kind of take it easy the next day as well. So, I was alone. My boyfriend was at work. My parents didn't know because I got the call like directly to me. So, they didn't know. And so like there was like these like 5 minutes where I sat there and I was like, oh my God.
Like, what do you do?
Like my life is about to change. And it was, it's so weird. I don't know. I'm such like a social girl. Like, and I love like I like filming stuff and taking photos. I like literally started recording myself. I have like I don't even think I can
your own
watch it.
personal vlog
Yeah.
though, of just like how you were feeling.
Yeah.
It's basically like doing a diary entry.
Exactly.
Like immediately just turning on your camera, just recording yourself and what you felt in that moment.
Yeah. Like,
have
I
you
think,
watched it back since?
I think like once, but it's, you know, I say like it's this day at this time, and I just found out I'm diagnosed with breast cancer. Like I was just like beyond myself, and I was 25 at the time, and I'm like, I didn't think me at 25 I was gonna have to deal with a cancer diagnosis.
No girl does. When you're
No.
25, you're worried about your boyfriend. You're worried about your job. You're worried about your pets. You're worried about like you're not
Your
thinking-
social life,
Your social.
like-
You're worried about like where am I going to go tonight for dinner?
Yeah.
You're not thinking about like
my weekend plans.
I have
like-
to go get a double mastectomy.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about like I got to go get surgery. I have to like deal with this. Right. I have to call my parents
Yeah.
and tell my parents.
Yeah. And so that like sums it up basically. And so I called my parents. I did a conference call with the three of us.
Oh my God, it's good that you call them at the same time
Yeah.
because it's like I wouldn't even know what to do. Like, do you call your mom? Do you call your dad?
I think
do you
I-
call your brother? Like,
I know. I
it's
mean-
like, who would I be calling?
Yeah, I mean, I called my mom. I go, wait 1 second. I like called my dad, merged them together, and then I
Oh
told
God, they
them.
must have known if like you're merging them together. They
Yeah.
must have just known.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, probably.
And I don't know your mom
Yeah.
personally. I know your dad, and your
Yeah.
dad is such a great guy.
Yeah.
And it's just like to
My
imagine.
mom is great too.
I'm sure
They're both fantastic
Knowing
people.
you,
Yeah.
I'm sure your parents are both fantastic
Yeah,
people.
they are.
But just like for them to have gone through such a trauma previously with a child, and now it's like take two. It's like the second time.
It honestly, in this whole process, that was something that I felt really like terrible about.
Yeah.
And I saw them both, you know, be there for me and show up and be at every appointment with me and be so supportive and understanding and take care of me during everything. But I knew how heartbreaking it was for them to see me go through it and to see, you know, another child have a diagnosis. And obviously mine was very different than my brother's, and my brother's was, you know, a very aggressive form of cancer. There wasn't really a lot we could do at
And
that
you guys
point.
didn't know about the gene, et
Yeah.
cetera. You guys didn't know, but
Yeah.
with you kind of had been preparing that like this is a possibility in my
Yes.
life.
And I think, and my parents and I have talked about this, I genuinely think like because of how early we caught this, like my brother saved my life. Like that's,
He was your angel.
he was. And I, you know, I mean, he still is.
Yeah.
I am always like, he's with me. But, you know, I think that's something where my parents probably felt some peace in as well, that this is going to be a treatable cancer. And the only reason we would have known that is because of my brother, is because of the testing I was
Wow,
doing and
that's
everything.
so powerful.
Yes. So, you know, I talked to my doctor before I called my parents. My doctor reassured me. He goes, it's very small and it's going to be treatable, but you're going to have to do surgery. And, you know, at the time they were like, we don't think you have to do other treatment like chemo or radiation. And I still don't, which is fantastic. But they were like, if you want to get this done, you got to do surgery. So called my parents. They both ran over here, had an emergency therapy session.
They
We
beat
love
the LA
therapy.
traffic. They beat LA traffic. They're
Literally,
like-
yeah. My boyfriend was at work and he's a doctor, so you know he wasn't able to come off until later. But my best friend also came over too, and so I was surrounded by, you know, my parents and my
by
best
your
friend.
support team, by the people that
Yes.
really, really love you.
Yes, and then you know we kind of just started coming up with a game plan of who we were going to meet with, you know, oncologists to meet with and figure out the next steps. You know, calling other doctors and, you know, understanding kind of like what the best next step is. And I knew what the next best step was, but it, like you said, it was hard to accept that was the next best step.
You know
was-
what you have to do, but you
Yes.
really don't want to do it.
Yeah, and it's a double mastectomy with reconstruction. And I, you know, like I said, that was something I was avoiding, and I was, you know, saying like I don't want to do it unless I have to, but this was the situation where I really had to. You
Yeah,
know,
like reality came. It was
exactly.
time.
It is. And, you know, I think I wouldn't have done it unless I had known this. And so I think it just forced me to do it. And now that I'm on the other side of the majority of my surgeries, I still have another one. I think I have this like forced perspective of I'm so glad I got it done. Like now I look back and I'm like, I'm really relieved I have it done.
Yeah, because you did it. You found it early enough.
Yes.
Where it was as small as a grain of rice.
Yeah.
But it's crazy to think that something as small as a grain of rice was like something that was going to get you.
Yeah.
And you found it because you were like, you literally were on it. The fact
Yeah.
that you were getting the ultrasound and the MRI, like that's like that, you took such control of your health that you were able to save your life. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, there was doctors that told me that it wouldn't have even been a lump for 10 years. And that is probably when, you know, it probably could have been a really bad cancer at that point. And so, you know, obviously, like, you still got to do your checks every month and everything, and you go to your doctor's appointments. But, you know, it's not just feeling for lumps. Like, there could still be other things that, you know, might be really small. You know, I think something that was also kind of hard for me to process was like, why am I so young with this diagnosis?
Yeah.
And obviously I had the gene, and I knew it was always potentially a possibility, but like you said, like, you never think it's actually going to happen.
And you also don't think it's going to happen to you. Like, oh, maybe it's happened to other people. And that was one of the things that caught me, because when I saw the post that your dad had shared and I looked at you, it was almost, I don't want to say looking at like a mirror, but I was like, I see a girl that's like my age going through something that I never thought that me as a 29-year-old woman would ever go through. I never thought like any of my friends would go through it. I did not think it happened to people in our 20s.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what's interesting about it, and as I learned more and as I talked to more people through this process, you know, I know people who were diagnosed by 30, and it kind of makes sense. Like, maybe they had something developing at 25 years old. You know, maybe there was,
but they just didn't see it.
You know, they just didn't see it. Or, you know, back then there wasn't, you know, technology yet to show these things. So obviously, like, we're very grateful that, you know, there's these medical advancements and preventative medicine is around, and, you know, people have resources to get these checks done. And, you know, also, like, know your genetics and everything to be able to get these tests done and everything. But yeah, so, you know, we met with a lot of surgeons. There was also a question of, like, I could have done like a lumpectomy, but because of my high risk, most doctors were like, you should do the full thing.
Yeah, and you had already been recommended, and you don't want something to come up somewhere else in the tissue.
Exactly. So, you know, even though it was hard to accept that, I knew that that was the best foot forward. There were a few other considerations I had to kind of, you know, it's a multiple stage surgery. So, you know, I think I would have loved to, like, have one surgery, done the mastectomy, get the reconstruction, be
all
done.
in one go.
But most doctors don't do that, I learned. And, you know, I think it's supposed to help with healing and everything. So, you know, there's a lot of different approaches you can do a surgery. So that was ultimately, like, the biggest thing that was, I had to figure out. Like, I had a doctor one time, or a surgeon, you know, suggested me to get a reduction, you know, and that would have been an extra surgery. And, you know, there's all these other things that, like, we had to consider. There's also understanding having your expanders or implants over or under the muscle. That's a whole other thing too.
And then also people forget, like, you also have to think about, like, you have to get your implants replaced.
Yes.
I think it's 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but people have to do that. And you also have to think about the size. Like, do you want to
Yes.
stay the same, or do you want to go smaller, or none at all? Some people don't even want to get reconstruction afterwards.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't, and that's totally fine. Like,
Yeah.
I think everyone has a different body.
It's their body, their choice.
Exactly.
It's 100% theirs. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, but look, when I got diagnosed, I was 25, and I'm like, I have a lot of years left to live, and I want to look good. I want to look good. I want to make sure I have the best work done on me. And I chose two surgeons who I went into those surgeries feeling so confident in them, because I knew that they were the best. And I am so happy with the results and everything. But, you know, I've had to do 3 surgeries in the span of 1 month.
It's so scary.
Which is crazy. And I've never had major surgery. Like, I've gotten my wisdom teeth out. But
God, I remember when I got my gallbladder taken out, I had
Yeah.
so much anxiety that they had to bring my mom back to, like, calm me down. Like, I literally was, like, weeping back there, and I was so scared to get put out. So I can only imagine.
Scary. It is.
Does it get easier after the first one?
Yeah. And so like I said, I had in my layout of surgeries, 3 surgeries, but I had to do an extra one, like, after my big one. So I'll kind of run you through the 3 surgeries I had to do. So the first one is called a nipple delay surgery. And not everyone does this, but basically you do it about 2 weeks before your double mastectomy. And they use that as an opportunity to go and take your lymph nodes out to biopsy them. But they also, what they do is they go in and they, like, cut around your nipple, I believe. And it's supposed to help increase blood flow, because there is always a risk of losing your nipple.
And blood flow is really, really important during a surgery.
Yes, absolutely. So it's kind of like a prep surgery. And so that was like a 2-hour surgery. I was put out for it. You know, it was a little bit of a recovery, but nothing too major. But I think it was nice to have that surgery 2 weeks before, because I understood the process of, you know, what like pre-op looks like, and
how to prepare for your surgery, how to go into surgery,
exactly.
your team that you're working with, that you were able to get through the first one, that you know that you woke up. It's like all of that above.
Exactly. And that was like an outpatient surgery. So I went home that day. So yeah, that was the first one, and that all went well. And I was really glad that I chose to do that surgery. Like I said, not everyone does it, but I think it was beneficial because I just wanted to do everything I could to preserve everything. Yeah. And so, you know, I did that. I also did, in between, I did hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which is also supposed to help with blood flow and just make sure that like the healing, you know, it's promoting healing and everything like that. The second surgery was the big one, which was the double mastectomy and also getting tissue expanders in. So that one is a huge surgery. And, you know, I had to stay in the hospital for that. That took 8 hours, which was obviously, I didn't know, but my poor family had to sit out there, and
your mom and your dad.
And, you know, I like, they were all sitting out there, and it was, you know, a just very long time. And, you know, like I said, I was in amazing hands with the surgeons, but it's scary. Like it's really scary to wait that long and, you know, understand what's going on. And, that surgery went well. You know, I got out 8 hours later. I stayed a night in the hospital, and I was discharged the following morning. And, you know, it was the recovery, and I was told the recovery was going to be tough. It was like nothing I ever thought I could imagine. It felt so upsetting. It hurt so much. It felt so weird. Like I remember coming home the first night and being like, I wish I didn't do this, because I was in so much pain.
And also just like emotional, like loss of a piece of yourself, and you know you had to do it.
Yes.
But it's just like.
Yeah. And look, I also was lucky enough where I had, I think, about 2 months, because my doctor said you don't need to go rush and do surgery. Like you can get your surgery done in the next month or two. I had enough time to accept the fact what I was losing. And I had friends of mine who helped me, you know, embrace my old body and welcome in beautifully a new body, and, you know, just be more comfortable with what was to come.
Yeah.
And so I think like I was able to kind of cope with it in a healthy way, and I knew what was about to happen, but I also had like time to like, in a way, mourn my body.
You have to, because what really matters is your heart and your soul.
Yes.
And that's really what is kept intact and what we're fighting to keep intact.
Absolutely.
And the body is just a shell, and you will survive. You know,
and I'll get used to the new, and everything.
You'll get used to the new.
Exactly. So, you know, it was hard, but, you know, I think, you know, the recovery was just so, like, you can't use your arms, and you're in pain, and you're like on all these pain meds, and it's, you know, you're kind of like, you can't really fend for yourself. You need people to help you, you know, and I think I'm a pretty independent person, but like I stayed at my mom's house for 2 weeks, and, you know, I needed help like getting in and out of bed. I couldn't shower. Like it was so many, you kind of like lost a little bit of yourself, but I slowly gained it back. And my surgeon explained to me, you're not going to feel a difference day by day, but you'll feel it week by week. And I think I'm on week 7 post recovery now. And like, I'm back at work. I'm able to like go to restaurants with my friends and
you're
hang
able to
out
think about all those things that a 26-year-old is supposed to be thinking about.
Exactly. And there's still like, I can't, I'm still limited on doing some things. Like, you know, I can't work out strenuously. I go to physical therapy, but, you know, I can't like lift anything heavy. There's still things I have to be careful of, but, you know, I'm starting to, you know, I can drive now. You know, I don't have the drains anymore, which is a whole other thing, because you have like 4 drains coming out of you for weeks. And, you know, so, you know, I think I'm slowly but surely like easing back into life. And then a few weeks after my big surgery, I had like a little, like I had to get like something revised, like a stitch had to just get closed up again. It was 1 hour. It was easy peasy for me.
You were like, I've been there, done that, whatever. I can do this.
Yeah. So that was really nothing, but, you know, obviously like a little bit of like a setback to like an extent. And then I will finish out the reconstruction in about like a little bit over a month. So I'm just looking forward to kind of being done with it and
just leaving it behind.
Yeah. And kind of, you know, like closing the door, and then
it's 2025,
moving
baby.
forward. I know 25 is our year. We're very excited. But yeah, I mean, I think it's such a scary thing to think about like when I first found out everything in September, and to know that like it's, you know, January 2025 and like all I've been through in the past few months, like it was so daunting to me when I found out everything, but I'm over the hump of most of it, of all the surgeries and everything. And so
Yeah, you see the light. Like,
yeah,
you see it.
yeah, I see it.
the
And
end.
I'm happy
You're at the finish line.
Exactly. And I'm happy I made the decision that I did. And, you know, it was not the easiest decision. It was not an easy recovery, and I'm still recovering, obviously. But, you know, I'm glad that I did this, and, you know, it's hopefully going to decrease my risk moving forward. And I think being open about it, and the reason like I've been posting about my journey is I think I've gotten a lot of messages from people and saying how much they admire that I've been open about it. I think talking about medical things and cancer can be a little like taboo sometimes. And, you know, but I think it's helpful to share your story because, you know, I kind of look to people who were posting about their journey and seeing how they, you know, recovered and what they did. And I think there's something really powerful about sharing that stuff because it could hopefully maybe inform someone else and help them maybe make a decision or empower them to make choices that
and take control of their health.
Exactly.
Also, yeah.
Exactly. So, you know, I know it can be like weird to put yourself out there and like talk about this in a way, but I think for me, like if this can help, if me sharing my story can help at least like one person, like I'm happy I did that then.
I'm just in awe of your gratitude, your positivity, your courage, just all of the above. As I said, I was completely captured. I am one of those people that when you were posting, I was just completely captured just by the human being that you are and the truth, the honesty, and the light that you're bringing to a situation that could be someone's darkest moment in their life. So I just really appreciate you and just
Thank you.
all of
You're
you.
so sweet. Thank you.
And if anyone else wants to keep up with Casey, they can do so on her Instagram at Casey Longstreet. I'll link it below. But thanks, Casey, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me on.
I'm Gala Avery, and this has been The Gala Show. The Gala Show is brought to you by Avery.com. This episode was executive produced by Roger Avery and produced by Gala Avery. Music composed by Andy Milburn. As always, I'm your host, Gala Avery. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved. Despite me sharing the same last name with this charity, I don't have any affiliation with it, besides the fact the issue is very near and dear to my heart. Did you know that in the United States, 2.7 million children currently have a parent in prison, and it's estimated that 10 million children have experienced parental incarceration at some point in their lives? I was one of these kids, and as an adult, I am really grateful to be able to give back to Project Avery. Their mission is to build leadership from within by supporting community through programs such as mentoring and outdoor education, and also to remove the stigma surrounding having a parent that's incarcerated. You don't have to feel alone. If you know a kid who could use these resources or would like to donate money or time to the charity, please go to Project Avery, that's AVARY.org, to check out what this amazing charity is all about. Again, that's projectavery.org. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart.